When I was not living in New York City, I used to travel by car, about 80,000, 90,000 miles per year. I ended up in a small town in Delaware called Milford. It's called Rehoboth Beach, about 45 minutes or an hour away. Anyway, I was supposed to leave the day after I actually left, but to avoid having to get up early in the morning to leave, I ended up leaving around 6 p.m. after work and went for a little over 5-hour drive that night. Since our stay was extremely short, we had a shitty Airbnb that we always use for our trips. Just before we left, I messaged the guy to see if we could rent a small $50 room that looked pretty good from the pictures. The guy was a little sketchy from the start, and it took a few exchanges before he told me that his father would hold the keys and I could rent it that night. He also informed me that there were quite a few tropical plants, that's a Delaware plant, in the kitchen, and that he couldn't move them on short notice. Oh well, I just needed to sleep for a few hours and I would leave in the morning. So I get there around 11:30 p.m. I don't know how many of you are from Milford or have been there, but it's very rural. This guy's house was in a tiny little gated, fenced community. It's pitch black. Duffel bag, backpack, jacket, spare jacket, using a PIN code to unlock the lockbox and turn the key. You go to a place and you get a gut feeling that something terrible is going on and you shouldn't be there. Yeah, it's the same feeling. So I put my stuff down on the recliner in front of me, and yes, to my surprise, there are a lot of tropical plants in the kitchen. The living room is there too. Bedroom number 1, 50s dolls everywhere, and a twin-sized mattress with no bed frame or sheets lying in the middle of the floor. Enough about that room. Go to the next room and there are nutcracker dolls everywhere. A single sheet on the bed and no pillow. I try to turn on the light with the only switch in the room. Okay, this room is no good either. Let's get a couch. I felt pretty uncomfortable at this point, but I knew it was just for one night. Anyway, I was hungry, so I went to Food Lion, the only place open. I got a pizza and some peach Snapple and headed back home. As a side note, I was so uncomfortable with the sensation that I set up my GoPro that I had with me on the trip to see if maybe I could catch something on my camera. Back at this place, the first thing I do is make sure everything is where I left it. So I grabbed the GoPro, took out the SD, and set the card into my laptop. I wanted to show you guys this place. To my surprise, there was nothing on the video. By this time, it was after midnight, and I had a full day of work and a fair amount of driving to do. So I was going to sleep on a very small couch. The apartment had one small 19-inch TV with no power cable, and the outlet by the couch was far enough away that my charging cell phone could not reach it. I was on Sprint at the time and had shitty service to begin with, so it wouldn't have mattered one way or the other. I left the lights on, because even though I was an adult, having the lights on made me feel a little safer. After an hour of lying there and not being able to sleep, nature called me and I needed to go to the bathroom. Now, let me preface this by saying that the kitchen floor is hardwood flooring, which makes a squeaking sound when I slide my chair on it. Back to my story, I'm in the bathroom doing my business and reading a bottle of John. As I sit there, I hear the sound of a shitty chair on the hardwood floor being gently pulled across the floor for about as long as it takes someone to sit down. My heart nearly jumped out of my chest. I felt like my heart was going to jump out of my chest. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I heard the sound of fingers tapping rhythmically on the wooden kitchen table. I froze. Damn it, pre-prep. I was already in the bathroom. I was literally there. I'm fucked, I'm fucked, I'm fucked. And repeated it 10, 11 times. So I sat there for 2-3 minutes trying to figure out what to do. At this point, the tapping had stopped, but I knew I couldn't stay there forever. I decided that whoever it was already knew I was here, so screw it, I was going to go and fight him off. So I rushed out the door, but there was nothing there. No one there, no sign of anyone, not even a chair moving. I literally didn't even bother to check the rest of the place. As if the place was going to burn down, I packed my bags, got in the car, and drove to the Holiday Inn an hour away, literally at 3 a.m. The room I had reserved wasn't ready yet, so they gave me a room with a king-sized bed. Neon signs blinked erratically, casting an eerie light on the deserted parking lot of the Sunset Motel. The motel, located on the outskirts of town, bore the scars of years of neglect on its faded exterior. But as a place for weary travelers to seek respite, The motel was the only refuge for miles around. Amelia's car came to an abrupt stop in front of the motel, the engine quieting with its last gasp. The motel's neon sign made ominous noises. The lobby was dimly lit, with the musty smell of cigarette smoke and damp carpeting. A man was standing behind the front desk. His voice was gravelly, like the gravel scattered in the parking lot outside. Amelia nodded and handed him her credit card with a forced smile. The clerk took it without a word and ran it through the old card reader with a practiced hand. As he handed her the room key, his eyes fell on Amelia for a moment, and a shiver ran down my spine. Ignoring the uneasy feeling in the pit of her stomach, Amelia thanked him and headed down the dimly lit hallway to her room. The door creaked open, revealing a space as bleak and lifeless as the rest of the motel. The bed was lumpy, the sheets were shabby, and the air was heavy with the smell of mold. But Amelia was tired and had no choice. Unable to shake off her uneasy feeling, she locked and chained the door. As the hours passed, her mind was plagued with restless thoughts and anxious dreams, and sleep became more distant. Finally, just after midnight, exhaustion overtook her, and she drifted off to a good night's sleep. But her rest was short-lived. In the middle of the night, Amelia was awakened by a sound that chilled her to the bone. It was a low growl and the unmistakable sound of metal and nails scraping against each other. Heart pounding, she reached for the bedside lamp. Panicked, she groped for her cell phone. With trembling hands, she called the front desk, but there was no answer. In desperation, she tried to open the door, but the chain was tightly closed. Then she heard heavy footsteps approaching from the hallway outside. Terrified, Amelia backed away from the door and braced herself for what horrors awaited her on the other side. With her back pressed against the cold wall, Amelia searched for a way out of her nightmare. Footsteps came closer and closer, each echoing through the empty hallway like a death knell. Desperate to escape, she scanned the room for anything that might serve as a weapon. It was a flimsy weapon, but better than nothing. Gripping it tightly, she prepared herself for the horror that awaited her. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped, and there was an eerie silence that choked the room. Amelia held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest, waiting for the inevitable. Then, without warning, the door slammed violently. Amelia clenched her lamp, her knuckles turning white with fear. The door creaked open slowly, revealing darkness on the other side. With trembling hands, Amelia flipped on the light switch, illuminating the room with a harsh fluorescent glow. To her horror, there was no intruder, no monster, just an empty hallway lit by the sickly glow of the motel's flickering lights. Relief washed over her in a dizzying wave, making her weak and shaken. Was it all a figment of her imagination? Was it a trick of the mind brought on by exhaustion and fear? But as she stood there shivering in the aftermath of her fear, a chill ran down her spine. Something was watching her, that much was certain. An unseen presence lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. With a new sense of urgency, Amelia packed her bags and fled the motel. As she drove off into the night, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had escaped in the nick of time from something far more sinister than she could have imagined. She tried to convince herself that it was just a bad dream, but part of her knew that the horrors of the Sunset Motel would haunt her for the rest of her days. The sun sank below the horizon, casting long shadows on the unpopular highway. Sarah gripped the steering wheel tightly and continued down the empty road. She had been driving for hours, and the monotony of the long trip was beginning to take its toll. Just as fatigue was about to reach its limit, Sarah spotted a neon sign flickering in the distance. Relieved that she had finally found a place to rest, she pulled into a deserted parking lot and turned off the engine. As she got out of the car, a cold wind blew through the air, sending shivers down her spine. A faded motel stood before her, its once vibrant paint peeling away. Despite its dilapidated appearance, Sarah felt a certain attraction to the building, and as she approached the front door, her apprehension grew. As she stepped into the room, a wave of exhaustion washed over Sarah. The walls were decorated with faded wallpaper, and the furniture was old. Despite its dull appearance, Sarah was grateful for the opportunity to rest her weary head. But as she sat down on the bed, a nagging unease lingered in the back of her mind. I had a feeling that this motel was hiding some dark secret. As Sarah drifted off to sleep, her dreams were plagued by strange and disturbing visions. When she awoke the next morning, Sarah was in a cold sweat and her heart was pounding. The sunlight streaming in through the window offered little comfort, and the events of the previous night were still fresh in her mind. Determined to shake off her uneasy feelings, Sarah decided to explore the motel grounds and look for a much-needed distraction. But as she wandered through the deserted hallways and overgrown gardens, she was struck by a sense of dread. Once inside, the lobby was dimly lit and the air was filled with the musty smell of neglect. A lone figure sat behind the front desk. Sarah coughed nervously and caught the enigmatic figure's attention. To her relief, the front desk person was a kindly older woman. She welcomed Sarah into the motel with a warm smile creasing her wrinkled face. Sarah gratefully accepted her room key and proceeded down the deserted hallway. As Sarah delved deeper into the mysteries of the motel, she discovered a series of disturbing clues. She discovered hidden passages and secret rooms, each one more sinister than the last. But it wasn't until she stumbled upon the motel's dark history that Sarah realized the true extent of the horrors hidden within its walls. Decades ago, the motel was the scene of a gruesome murder. The spirits of the victims still haunt the motel, seeking revenge on those who disturbed their slumber. With a growing sense of dread, Sarah realized that she was unwittingly caught up in the motel's dark legacy. And as the shadows loomed, she realized that to escape the clutches of the abandoned motel, she would have to confront the horrors of her past.